fact that not a soul in the world, not even General Epanchin, had ever heard a word about the above 75,000 roubles, and that this was the first time he had ever given expression to his intentions in respect to them. Nastasia Philipovna's reply to this long rigmarole astonished both the friends considerably. Not only was there no trace of her former irony, of her old hatred and enmity, and of that dreadful laughter, the very recollection of which sent a cold chill down Totski's back to this very day. But she seemed charmed, and really glad to have the opportunity of talking seriously with him for once in a way. She confessed that she had long wished to have a frank and free conversation, and to ask for friendly advice, but that pride had hitherto prevented her. Now, however, that the ice was broken, nothing could be more welcome to her than this opportunity. First, with a sad smile, and then with a twinkle of merriment in her eyes, she admitted that such a storm as that of 5 years ago was now quite out of the question. She said that she had long since changed her views of things, and recognized that facts must be taken into consideration in spite of the feelings of the heart. What was done and ended, and she could not understand why Totski should still feel alarmed. She next turned to General Epanchin, and observed most courteously that she had long since known of his daughters, and that she had heard none but good report, that she had learned to think of them with deep and sincere respect. The idea alone that she could in any way serve them would be to her both a pride and a source of real happiness. It was true that she was lonely in her present life. Totski had judged her thoughts aright. She longed to rise, if not to love, at least to family life and new hopes and objects. But as to Gavrila Ardalionovitch, she could not as yet say much. She thought it must be the case that he loved her. She felt that she too might learn to love him, if she could be sure of the firmness of his attachment to herself. But he was very young, and it was a difficult question to decide. What she specially liked about him was that he worked and supported his family by his toil. She had heard that he was proud and ambitious. She had heard much that was interesting of his mother and sister. She had heard of them from Mr. Ptitsin, and would much like to make their acquaintance. But another question, would they like to receive her into their house? At all events, though she did not reject the idea of this marriage, she desired not to be hurried. As for the 75,000 roubles, Mr. Totski need not have found any difficulty or awkwardness about the matter. She quite understood the value of money, and would of course accept the gift. She thanked him for his delicacy, however, but saw no reason why Gavrila Ardalionovitch should not know about it. She would not marry the latter, she said, until she felt persuaded that neither on his part nor on the part of his family did there exist any sort of concealed suspicions as to herself. She did not intend to ask forgiveness for anything in the past, which fact she desired to be known. She did not consider herself to blame for anything that had happened in former years, and she thought that Gavrila Ardalionovitch should be informed as to the relations which had existed between herself and Totski during the last 5 years. If she accepted this money, it was not to be considered as indemnification for her misfortune as a young girl, which had not been in any degree her own fault, but merely as compensation for her ruined life. She became so excited and agitated during all these explanations and confessions that General Epanchin was highly gratified, and considered the matter satisfactorily arranged once for all. But the once bitten Totski was twice shy, and looked for hidden snakes among the flowers. However, The special point to which the two friends particularly trusted to bring about their object, namely Gania's attractiveness for Nastasia Philipovna, stood out more and more prominently. The pourparlers had commenced, and gradually even Totski began to believe in the possibility of success. Before long Nastasia and Gania had talked the matter over. Very little was said, her modesty seemed to suffer under the infliction of discussing such a question. But she recognized his love, on the understanding that she bound herself to nothing whatever, and that she reserved the right to say no up to the very hour of the marriage ceremony. Gania was to have the same right of refusal at the last moment. It soon became clear to Gania, after scenes of wrath and quarrellings at the domestic hearth, that his family was seriously opposed to the match, and that Nastasia was aware of this fact was equally evident. She said nothing about it, though he daily expected her to do so. There were several rumours afloat before long, which upset Totski's equanimity a good deal, but we will not now stop to describe them, merely mentioning an instance or two. One was that Nastasia had entered into close and secret relations with the Epanchin girls, a most unlikely rumour. Another was that Nastasia had long satisfied herself of the fact that Gania was merely marrying her for money, and that his nature was gloomy and greedy, impatient and selfish to an extraordinary degree, and that although he had been keen enough in his desire to achieve a conquest before, yet since the two friends had agreed to exploit his passion for their own purposes, it was clear enough that he had begun to consider the whole thing a nuisance and a nightmare. In his heart, passion and hate seemed to hold divided sway, and although he had at last given his consent to marry the woman, as he said, under the stress of circumstances, yet he promised himself that he would take it out of her after marriage. Nastasia seemed to Totski to have divined all this, and to be preparing something on her own account, which frightened him to such an extent that he did not dare communicate his views even to the general. But at times he would pluck up his courage and be full of hope and good spirits again, acting, in fact, as weak men do act in such circumstances. However, both the friends felt that the thing looked rosy indeed when one day Nastasia informed them that she would give her final answer on the evening of her birthday, which anniversary was due in a very short time. A strange rumour began to circulate meanwhile, no less than that the respectable and highly respected General Epanchin was himself so fascinated by Nastasia Philipovna that his feeling for her amounted almost to passion. What he thought to gain by Gania's marriage to the girl it was difficult to imagine. Possibly he counted on Gania's complaisance, for Totski had long suspected that there existed some secret understanding between the general and his secretary. At all events, the fact was known that he had prepared a magnificent present of pearls for Nastasia's birthday, and that he was looking forward to the occasion when he should present his gift with the greatest excitement and impatience. The day before her birthday he was in a fever of agitation. Mrs. Epanchin, long accustomed to her husband's infidelities, had heard of the pearls, and the rumour excited her liveliest curiosity and interest. The general remarked her suspicions, and felt that a grand explanation must shortly take place, which fact alarmed him much. This is the reason why he was so unwilling to take lunch, on the morning upon which we took up this narrative, with the rest of his family. Before the prince's arrival, he had made up his mind to plead business and cut the meal, which simply meant running away. He was particularly anxious that this one day should be passed, especially the evening, without unpleasantness between himself and his family. And just at the